Hello everyone! So for today's video I thought I would try the watercolor look again that I had shown in an earlier video this month. That video I'd used my MFT ink pads because I don't have any of the Distress ink pad colors. And a bunch of people had said like, oh, you can use your Distress markers to get the same kind of look. And while I knew that, I didn't really want to do that just because I think it would be a little more difficult. But I thought I would try it out because I hadn't, and I grabbed a couple small pieces of just some scrap watercolor paper and a few of my Distress markers, and yeah, tried it out. So it works. It's not as good as it would be if you had the actual Distress ink pads or just larger ink pads, because I showed you guys can use like the MFT ink pads, or even other brands would probably work. But the markers do work, you just have to work a little harder at it. It's harder to get more color on the little craft sheet, like you can just kind of see how the ink kind of just pools up on it. But it does work. So basically all I was doing was scribbling it onto my craft sheet. Obviously any non-porous surface would work, so you could use a plastic bag or a plastic plate, anything like that. So just scribble the marker on and then spray it with some water, and then you just press the watercolor paper into it, and then I just kept heat drying it in between each layer because I didn't want to sit around and wait for it to dry, and then just kept pressing it into the watercolor until I was happy with it. So I did similar colors for each piece. So for the first piece I had done the Seedless Preserves, Peacock Feathers, and Mowed Lawn, so just blues and greens. And then for the second piece I did Picked Raspberry, Ripe Persimmon, and Squeezed Lemonade. I find with this it works really well to kind of keep to somewhat similar colors that will blend together and kind of form their own colors, you know, like pinks and yellows and oranges, blues, greens, purples. If you're working on a larger area, you can kind of get away with using other colors and kind of mixing, but if you use too many, you can end up with a muddy mess. Because I tried this before I started filming, and I used all those colors on a larger piece, and it was a disaster. So it's just something fun to kind of play with. But with the markers, personally, I would only use it if I was doing small little pieces like this. If I was going to do a full card size piece, I wouldn't use the markers. It would take forever, and I just don't think you get as good a results as you would with the ink pad. But I did both these little pieces and I was happy with how they turned out. And then I grabbed my Paper Smooches Spring Fling stamp set, and it had this little egg outline stamp, and that's what I was meaning to do. I wanted to kind of make these cool modeled eggs for Easter. And I had really hoped I could fit 3 onto this one piece, but I couldn't. I tried really hard. So the second piece, since it was the exact same size as the first, I didn't have to like pretty much overlap the eggs because there was just no way I was going to get 3 on there. So 4 altogether, that was pretty decent. So I stamped them with my Hero Arts black dye ink, which yes, I'm really loving this ink. And once I'd stamped, I just trimmed them out with my scissors, and then I took my Distress marker, the Black Soot Distress marker, and just ran it along all the edges of these cutout eggs. It just finishes it off, and it covers up any little teeny spots that I might have missed with the scissors, so that you don't have to be perfectly perfect when you're trimming out things like this. So I just make sure not to get any on my fingers so I don't smear it over all the little fun modeled watercolor areas. So really quick, really simple. And then off camera, I decided to make use of the little scraps I had left over and stamped the little butterfly that's in the same set onto a couple of the little scraps and trimmed them out. And I just trimmed off their antennas or antennae, however you say it. Anyway, and then just took the same markers and just filled in the bodies just to give them a little bit of something extra. And then went over the edges with those as well with the Distress marker, because it just finishes off things like that when you trim them out. And then I got a piece of Doodlebug textured cardstock in a pretty blue. I think this is the swimming pool one. I buy them in the multi-packs from CC Design, so none of them are labeled, and I'm just too lazy to double check. But anyway, pretty blue. And then I grabbed a green cardstock and die cut it with my MFT Tall Grassy Edge Dynamics, which I'm loving. So I die cut 2 pieces and then adhered them back to back onto the piece of blue cardstock. And then I'm just going to tuck these little eggs right in there amongst the grass. So really fun for Easter. Once I was happy with kind of how I placed them, I just used, again, some Tombow Mono Multi, just put a bit on the back and press them into place so that they won't just fall off the card. but because it's also watercolor paper and they were so saturated, they're kind of curled up a bit, but I just left them like that. It kind of gives it just a little extra something. And then to get the butterflies into place, I'm just going to ink up that little butterfly stamp again and just stamp it right onto the cardstock. So then they've got their little antennae. I think that's how you say it. It's been a long time since high school. Anyway, got them stamped, and then the one, because it's textured cardstock, it was not getting a perfect impression. So I just grabbed my little Copic multi-liner, any black marker would work, and just filled in those little spots. But then all I had to do was adhere the little butterflies over it, and they are just perfect. So once I was done with that, I matted it with a black piece of cardstock, so it kind of ties everything in together. And then my card base is just a heavyweight white cardstock. And I didn't have a Happy Easter sentiment, at least not one that I really liked. So I made my own using the Paper Smooches mini monogram set. And I stamped it onto all the letters onto my stamp positioner first, just to make sure it fit properly under the main image and wouldn't look completely crazy. So this set comes with quite a few letters and like multiples of each letter, so I'd originally hoped that I could just build each word all together at once, but a couple of letters I didn't really like and had to reuse the same ones, so I had to stamp each letter one at a time. So it didn't turn out perfectly straight doing it this way, but at the same time it just works. You know, kind of cute and quirky. That's how Paper Smooches stamps are, so I went with it. And then after this, I went and filled in the kind of open spaces in the letters with my markers, which if I was to redo this card, I wouldn't do this. Or I would pick up the color with my water brush so it was a little lighter. I just found it too intense. But yeah, I'm working with a very limited amount of time, and the chance to redo cards for me is slim to none. So I just go with it. But anyway, on the inside of the card, I die cut another piece of the tall grassy edge and just did one, and then tucked in that last little mottled egg, and then the last little butterfly, stamped that into place and adhered them. And then that finishes off this fun little Easter card. So it's a fun technique, and I like how these like eggs look, because they look like, you know, the tie-dye effect and that you would do yourself. So really cute and fun. As always, I will post a link below the video to my blog post, and then I'll have the links to all the supplies used. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!